I walked into the living room with Darius right behind me. My heart pounded harder than it should have, but I kept my head high. Ethan was on the couch, his feet up, eyes glued to one of those detective shows he loved so much. The moment he saw me, his face lit up with that familiar smile, the one that used to make me feel safe. But as soon as his eyes shifted to Darius, everything changed. The smile vanished. His face blinked like a switch had been flipped. "Ethan, we need to talk," I said, my voice thinner than I'd intended. My throat felt dry, like I'd swallowed sand. He muted the TV, eyes locked on me, his confusion slowly hardening into something else. I could feel Darius behind me, calm and quiet, like he had nothing to lose. "This is Darius," I continued, forcing the words out before I could second-guess myself. "He wants to be part of my life, too." Silence. Not shock, not shouting, just a stillness that made my chest tighten. Ethan didn't yell. He didn't curse. He just sat there, his eyes slowly scanning me like I was a puzzle with a missing piece. Then, without a word, he stood up and walked out. No questions, no demand comms, just the sound of his footsteps down the hall and the distant click of the bathroom door. Moments later, the toilet flushed, loud and final. I glanced at Darius. He shrugged like this was normal. It wasn't. It definitely wasn't. Ethan came back into the living room like nothing had happened. Same steady footsteps, same calm face. But I knew better. Something had shifted. He wasn't looking at me, not really. His eyes were on something far away, like he was already 10 steps ahead of me in a game I didn't even know we were playing. Then I saw it, a small silver keychain swinging lightly from his fingers, catching the light every few seconds. It wasn't flashy, just one of those plain metal loops, but somehow, in that moment, it felt more dangerous than a weapon. "What's that?" I asked, trying to sound casual. My voice barely made it past my throat. I hated how small it sounded. He didn't answer right away, just stared at it like it held all the answers he needed. Then, without looking at me, he said, "The key to a new beginning." I blinked, my heart skipping. "What does that mean, Ethan?" My voice cracked on his name, and I hated that, too. He glanced at me then, just a glance, but it was enough. His face was unreadable, like stone. I searched for the man I knew, but he wasn't there anymore. That man would have argued, would have yelled, would have called me out right then and there. But this version of Ethan, this version was quiet. Too quiet. Behind me, I heard Darius shift his weight, his calm cracking just a little. I didn't have to look to know he was uncomfortable. Good. At least I wasn't alone in that feeling. The keychain kept swinging back and forth, back and forth. It felt like a countdown, but I didn't know what we were counting down to. I glanced at Darius, hoping he'd say something. He didn't. He just stood there with his hands in his pockets, his eyes darting between Ethan and me like he was watching a movie he'd seen 100 times. No one said anything for a long, heavy minute, the kind of silence that isn't really silent at all. My heart thud in my ears, and I couldn't stop staring at that keychain, back and forth, back and forth. "Ethan," I tried again, swallowing hard. "What's the key for?" He smiled then. Not a kind smile, not even a mean one. It was the kind of smile that said, "You'll find out soon enough." "I already told you," he said, his voice calm as ever. "A new beginning." Then I saw another thing. A box. Not just any box, our box. The one we used to keep our wedding rings in.
My chest tightened the second I saw it.
It was small, mahogany wood with gold trim, the kind of thing you'd only open on special occasions. We used to joke that it was our little treasure chest, but there was nothing funny about the way Ethan held it now. Steady, deliberate, like he was cradling something sacred he no longer believed in. I stood frozen, my eyes fixed on that box.
I didn't have to ask.
I knew what was coming, but I didn't want it to be true. He moved slowly, walking past me like I wasn't even there, his eyes locked on the coffee table. With the kind of care people use to defuse a bomb, he set it down. No slam, no extra force, just set it there. He didn't sit. He stayed standing, his fingers resting on the lid. His eyes finally lifted to meet mine, and I felt every ounce of blame, hurt, and anger sitting behind them. "Go ahead," he said softly. "Look." My heart stopped. I didn't move, but my eyes did, straight to the box. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to see. But I stepped forward anyway, hands shaking as I reached for it. My fingers brushed the cool wood. The lid was lighter than I expected, and it lifted easily, like it had been waiting for this moment. Empty.
Completely, absolutely, gut-wrenchingly empty.
No gold bands, no diamonds, just a hollow space where everything we built used to be. I felt a sharp pull in my chest, like something had been yanked out of me. Two. I turned to him, breathless. "Ethan, where are they?" He tilted his head slightly, like I'd asked a dumb question. "Gone," he said, his voice calm in a way that made me feel anything but calm. His eyes stayed locked on mine as he added, "I flushed them." My breath hitched, and for a second, I thought I might throw up. I gripped the edge of the table, needing something solid to hold on to. You flushed them?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He nodded once, slow and deliberate. "Both of them. Yours and mine." My knees felt weak, like the floor wasn't as solid as it used to be. "Why would you do that, Ethan?" My voice cracked on his name, but I didn't care anymore. I was desperate. His eyes narrowed, his face a mask of control. "Because you did," he said simply. "You flushed it all away the second you brought him into my house." I felt that. Not like a slap, not like a punch, but something worse. It was the truth, sharp and unavoidable. No lie I told myself could fight it. Darius shifted behind me, clearing his throat like he had something to say, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't. "Ethan, please," I said, stepping closer to him. My voice had that desperate edge I hated, but I couldn't stop it. "We can fix this." He raised a hand to stop me. "Don't." One word, but it hit harder than a scream. "You made your choice. This." He tapped the empty box once. "This is your result." I glanced back at Darius, hoping for backup, but he just stood there with his hands in his pockets, his eyes darting between me and Ethan like he was waiting for a referee to blow the whistle. He didn't look so sure of himself anymore. "Ethan, I'm sorry," I said quickly, my words tripping over each other. "I didn't mean for it to get this far, I swear. I didn't know how to." "Stop talking," he said quietly. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't have to. His eyes were colder than I'd ever seen them, like he'd already decided something. "You brought him into our marriage, Vanessa. You made your choice." "I didn't know it would hurt you like this," I choked out, barely able to hit myself over the sound of my heartbeat. "That's the problem," he replied, his voice cutting through me like glass. "You didn't think. At all." He didn't shout. He didn't rage. He didn't cry. And that's what scared me most. A week later, the knock on my door felt like a punch in the chest. I wasn't expecting anyone, so for a second I thought it might be Darius, but when I opened it wasn't him. It was a woman in a gray suit, holding a manila envelope. No smile, no greeting, just business. "Vanessa Reed?" she asked, her tone sharp and to the point. "Yeah, that's me," I said slowly, dread curling in my stomach. She handed me the envelope, her fingers letting go just a second too fast, like she couldn't wait to be done with me. "You've been served," she said, already turning to leave.
Wait.
"What is this?" I called after her, but she didn't answer. She was already halfway down the driveway. I watched her walk away, feeling like I'd just been handed a live grenade. My hands were shaking as I closed the door. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. I stared at it for a moment, trying to convince myself that it was something else, anything else, a mix-up, a mistake, a bill I forgot to pay. But I knew better. I tore it open. The first thing I saw was Ethan's name, then mine, then 2 words in bold at the top. Petition for divorce. My breath caught in my throat. My eyes darted over the words, skipping past all the legal jargon, searching for something that made sense. Sole custody, full legal rights, irreconcilable differences. It felt like the walls were closing in. I flipped through the pages so fast, I almost ripped one. There was evidence. Photos of me and Darius together, text messages, screenshots, dates, times, places. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. It wasn't random. It wasn't accidental. This wasn't Ethan acting on impulse. He'd been planning this. I sank onto the couch, the papers spilling around me like leaves in a storm. My mind was spinning. I thought back to every moment Ethan had been quiet, every glance, every long pause in conversation. He'd known for weeks, maybe months. While I was sneaking around, he was gathering his evidence. While I was hiding, he was building his case. I felt sick. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, and I grabbed it like it was a lifeline. It was a text from my lawyer, Malcolm Bryant. I'd hired him for the house refinance last year, never imagining I'd need him for something like this. "Call me."
Urgent.
I hit the call button immediately, my breath still shaky. He picked up on the second ring. "Vanessa, I just got the petition. We need to talk." "I'm looking at it right now," I muttered, thumbing through the stack of papers. "He's asking for full custody, Malcolm. Full custody of the kids." My voice cracked on the word kids, and I hated it, hated how small I sounded. "Yeah," Malcolm said slowly, like he was trying to ease me into the worst news of my life. "He's arguing that your affair is proof of emotional instability. He's got pictures, texts, witness statements. It's pretty thorough." I pressed my hand against my forehead, squeezing my eyes shut. Thorough. Of course it was thorough. Ethan was nothing if not thorough. Can he win? I whispered. I hated asking, but I had to know. There was a long pause on the other end. When Malcolm finally spoke, his voice was lower, like he didn't want to be the one to say it. "He's got a strong case, Vanessa. You need to be ready for that." I felt everything inside me collapse. My kids. He was coming for my kids. I thought we could fight about the house, the money, even the ring he flushed down the toilet, but the kids' number.
No. No, no.
My voice was barely a whisper. "He's going to take them from me, isn't he?" Malcolm hesitated. That hesitation was my answer. I sat there for a long time, the phone still pressed to my ear, even after Malcolm said goodbye. My eyes stayed on the papers scattered across the table. The photos of me and Darius felt like knives, each one sharper than the last. They weren't even bad pictures. We were smiling in most of them. But they were enough. They were enough to make me look like a bad mother. The next few days were a blur of panic and denial. I barely slept, barely ate. My phone buzzed nonstop. Texts from friends, calls from my sister, notifications from lawyers I didn't even know existed. Somehow, everyone knew. People I hadn't spoken to in months suddenly had thoughts about my life. They didn't say it outright, but I could hear it in their voices. Vanessa, how could you do that to Ethan? I just didn't think you were that kind of person. You should have kept your family together, girl. I hung up on most of them. Ethan wasn't calling me. Not a single message, not even an angry text. Nothing. He was done talking. He'd already said all he needed to say with photos, text messages, and legal petitions. He was letting the court do the rest. I didn't realize how bad it was until the first court hearing. I sat at the defendant's table, hands clenched in my lap, Malcolm beside me whispering advice I barely heard. Across from me, Ethan sat calm and collected, his suit pressed perfectly, his face the picture of patience and sincerity. When it was his turn to speak, he stood up slowly, buttoned his jacket, and approached the judge like he'd done it 1,000 times. No notes, no hesitation. Your Honor, Ethan began, his voice clear and steady. My only goal is to protect my children. I felt the air leave my lungs. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't point fingers or call me names. He talked about the kids like they were the only thing that mattered, like he was the only parent who cared. He mentioned how they needed a stable environment, how they deserved a safe, distraction-free home, how their mother's recent choices had put them in emotional danger. I couldn't breathe. He pulled out everything, witness statements from neighbors, teachers, my best friend Kayla, even wrote something hair. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. By the time the judge ruled, I knew what was coming. I could see it on her face before she even opened her mouth. Full custody is granted to the petitioner, Ethan Reed. I didn't cry, not at first. I just sat there, staring at my hands like they belonged to someone else. The words supervised visitation eat in my head, sharp and loud. I'd heard those words in movies. I never thought I'd hear them applied to me. I watched Ethan walk out of the courtroom, head held high. He didn't look at me, not once. I stayed seated long after everyone else had left. Malcolm was still talking, telling me about the next steps, but his voice felt distant. All I could think about was that last look Ethan gave me at the house, the look that said, "This is what you brought on yourself." He'd said it, and I hadn't believed him. Now I did. The first few days after the court ruling felt like I was living in someone else's life. I woke up every morning expecting to hear my kids' voices, expecting them to barge into my room, jump on my bed, and ask for breakfast. But the house was silent. No footsteps, no giggling, just silence. I'd walk into their room sometimes, hoping for something, a smell, a sound, a feeling, but their beds were neatly made. Their toys were gone. Ethan had taken everything. Every trace of them was wiped away like they'd never lived here at all. I sat on the edge of my bed one night, staring at my phone, scrolling through old photos, pictures of them at the park, at birthday parties, Christmas mornings. I clicked on a video of my son Miles from 2 years ago. He was singing Happy Birthday off-key while smearing frosting on his face. I smiled so hard my face hurt. Then I started crying, not the pretty kind of crying, the ugly, gasping, can't breathe kind. I clutched the phone to my chest like it was him, like if I squeezed hard enough, I could feel him again. But I couldn't. They were gone. Darius called me once that week. I thought he'd be checking on me, offering some comfort, but no. His voice was stiff, awkward. "Hey, Vanessa," he muttered, like he wasn't sure if he should have called at all. "Hey," I said, my voice thick from crying. "Look, He paused too long. I already knew where this was going. "This whole thing, it's too much. I didn't sign up for this." I sat up straight, wiping my face. "What are you talking about, Darius?" "You know what I mean," he said. "The court stuff, the lawyers, your kids." "Vanessa, I can't. I'm not built for this." I felt the air leave my lungs. "You're not built for this?" My voice cracked on the last word. "You think I am?" "Come on, V, don't do that," he muttered. His voice was distant, like he'd already checked out. "I'm just saying, I'm not the guy you need right now." I laughed, but it wasn't real. It was the kind of laugh that hurts your chest. "The guy I need?" I repeated, my voice rising. "The guy I need wouldn't leave when things get hard. Darius. That's what I need." "Vanessa, I'm sorry, all right?" he said quickly, but it wasn't real. It was just something to fill the silence. "I can't do this anymore." He hung up before I could say anything else. I stared at the phone like it might ring again, like he'd change his mind. But he didn't. He never called back. I sat there for a long time, phone still in my hand, heart heavier than it had been in weeks. First I lost Ethan. Then I lost my kids. Now I've lost Darius, too. No, that's not right, I thought bitterly. I didn't lose them. I threw them all away. Days passed, each one slower than the last. My family stopped calling. Friends stopped checking in. Nobody wanted to be associated with Vanessa, the unfit mother. They didn't say it out loud, but I could feel it in their texts, the short, clipped replies, the sorry, I'm busy messages. I wasn't worth the effort anymore. One night, I went to the grocery store just to feel like a person again, just to be around other people. I didn't even need anything. I wandered the aisles aimlessly, picking up cereal boxes and putting them back. At one point, I saw a mom with her 2 little kids, a boy and a girl about the same ages as mine. The boy was whining about wanting a candy bar, and the mom was half scolding him, half laughing as she tossed it into the cart. I stood there too long, watching them. The mom caught me staring, gave me a polite smile, then looked away quickly, like I was some she didn't want to think about for too long. I left my cart in the middle of the aisle and walked out of the store. By the time I got back to my apartment, it felt smaller than before, quieter. I sat on the floor in the living room, knees pulled to my chest. No TV, no music, just silence. That's when I realized something I hadn't wanted to face. The worst part wasn't the court hearing. It wasn't even losing custody of my kids. It was this. The silence. The nothingness that came after everything was gone. I couldn't run from it. It followed me from room to room. It sat next to me on the couch. It climbed into bed with me at night, curling up next to me like an unwanted guest. I tried to fight it. I cleaned the house top to bottom one day, scrubbing walls, washing floors, reorganizing drawers. It didn't help. I put on old movies I used to love. Didn't help. I tried calling my sister, but she didn't answer. I sat on the balcony with a cup of tea that got cold before I even touched it. Didn't help. No one was coming to save me. One night, I scrolled through social media. It was a mistake. The first post I saw was a photo of him with the kids at an amusement park. They were smiling, faces sticky with ice cream. Ethan had that big, confident grin, the one I used to love. He captioned it "Family First." I stared at that photo for a long time. Miles was holding Ethan's hand. Nia was on his shoulders, grinning like she just won a prize. My chest felt like it had been hollowed out with a spoon. They looked happy. No, not just happy. They looked at peace. I sat my phone down, face down, like that would make it go away. It didn't. Later that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. My mind wouldn't stop playing that photo on a loop. Them smiling, them living life without me. Then realizing they were fine without me. I turned and over, pulling the blanket over my head like I was a kid again, hiding from the monsters. But the monster wasn't under the bed. It was me. I was the one who wrecked it all. Ethan had said it himself. This is what you brought on yourself. He was right. Days turned into weeks. Nobody checked on me. No calls, no texts, just silence. One afternoon, I saw Ethan at the kids' school. It was Nia's parent-teacher conference, and I had visitation rights that let me attend. Ethan was already in the hallway, standing tall in his gray blazer, hands in his pockets, looking calm as ever. How does he do that? I wondered. How does he stay so put together when I feel like I'm falling apart? He didn't notice me at first. Then he did. Our eyes met for half a second, and he nodded once. No smile, no anger, just acknowledgement. He went back to talking to the teacher, like I wasn't there. That was the moment I knew he'd moved on, not just from me, from all of it. I was a ghost now, someone who used to know. I stayed until the conference was over, pretending to listen as the teacher talked about Nia's progress, but I wasn't really there. My mind was back in that hallway, replaying the way Ethan had looked at me, like I was nobody. On the drive home, I kept my eyes on the road, blinking away tears that refused to fall. My apartment was still waiting for me, silent as ever. This was my new life. No Ethan, no Darius, no kids. Just me and the silence. And that silence, it's louder than anything I've ever heard.